In the cold hush of the galactic fringe, a signal pulsed through the darkness. It wasn't a message of diplomacy or trade. No polished language or ceremonial code. It was a scream, compressed, raw, and panicked. The Valari, a once proud species of scholars and visionaries, had sent their last breath into the void. A call for help etched in static and dread. And the galaxy, distant and fragmented as ever, heard it. Most ignored it. A few debated. One responded. The Deathworlders. They hadn't been seen in over a generation, not in any official sense. Their worlds were quarantined long ago, hidden behind silent perimeters and abandoned relay stations. Few remembered their faces, fewer still remembered their voices. But everyone remembered their legacy, an empire born not from conquest, but from survival. They had no allies, no treaties, just a reputation that traveled faster than any ship ever could. And now, someone had triggered that reputation. The signal reached them not by accident, but design. The Valari relay had pierced dormant surveillance webs embedded in forgotten corners of hyperspace. Ancient algorithms spun to life, flaring red with a phrase that had not been spoken aloud in centuries. Extinction-level hostile encounter confirmed. When the Deathworlder Command AI decrypted the Valari transmission, it recognized the telltale entropy markers, civilization collapse, in real time. Commander Arlen Voss stood silently on the bridge of the Iron Dagger, the flagship of the 7th Orbital Siege Group. His features were carved from years of ultraviolet storms and sub-zero trench warfare. A man who had once held his brother's hand through a plasma cauterization and didn't flinch. Blue light from the display screen bathed his scarred face as he watched the signal repeat. SOS, please. Valari core under siege, unknown force, no contact, entire systems going dark. He paused the feed. Unknown, my ass, he muttered. They're back, a voice asked behind him. It was Cale Ricks, his second in command, and possibly the only person aboard who still retained a sliver of optimism. Young, but seasoned enough to wear armor without discomfort. Her eyes flicked to the projection, parsing the data streams. Voss didn't answer her directly. What's the proximity of our nearest battle group? 60 light hours. They'll need fold recalibration. Then recalibrate them. I want the fleet assembled and outbound in 6. Cale hesitated. Are we sure about this? The Valari haven't exactly been fond of us in the past. We go in now, we go in loud. Voss's voice was granite. This isn't diplomacy. This is extermination protocol. There was no further argument. Orders rippled out through secure lines, awakening the scattered units of the 7th. Deep in the belly of the Iron Dagger, engineers prepped quantum hammers and fusion silos. Massive cruisers stirred from orbit-locked silence, engines glowing with ferocious light. The fleet would burn across the stars, their arrival not heralded with fanfare, but by the eerie silence that preceded planetary sieges. Back on Valari Prime, the situation decayed with every hour. Floating above the cities, their once golden satellites blinked into darkness, one by one. Ground comms fizzled out as swarms descended like a shadow tide, erasing infrastructure, memory, and people with equal indifference. The enemy, whatever it truly was, did not speak, did not pause, did not feel. Valari Prime Minister Syntheron stood inside the crisis chamber beneath the Capitol dome, watching as his planet died. He was not a warrior. He had once campaigned for reforesting the mountain belts and creating quantum poetry with children. He had believed in diplomacy, in unity. Now, he wondered if any of those ideals mattered when death came wearing no face. We've had no response from the Harmonious Accord. No fleets, no offers of refuge, his science advisor said, voice trembling. Theron swallowed his dread. Send the signal again. Use the Deathworlder protocol. The advisor paled. Sir, are you sure? If they answer. We're past the point of worrying about monsters, Theron said quietly. We're already in the mouth of one. 2 days later, space tore open above Valari Prime. Fold space fractured like a mirror, and through it surged the 7th Fleet. At its center flew the Iron Dagger, its black hull absorbing light, its surfaces bristling with weapons from a dozen forgotten wars. The air around the planet seemed to harden under their arrival, as though even the vacuum feared their presence. Arlen Voss stood at the observation window, hands clasped behind his back. Bring up the planet's surface, he said. Images flooded the display, cities in ruin, forests burning, mountain hives seething with parasitic movement. But most haunting were the black towers that had erupted overnight, pulsing with an energy that defied analysis. Kale stared. That's not natural. No, Voss agreed. That's what we're here to correct. A direct channel opened from Valari Command. Theron's face appeared, worn and pale, eyes sunken from sleepless horror. You answered, he whispered. We did. I don't know what to say. We're grateful, terrified, but grateful. Voss gave no comfort. Evacuate any population centers near those structures. We won't discriminate between target and collateral. Theron blinked. Wait, you're saying? Voss cut the line. Mercy would slow them down. Fleet weapons came online, silent and devastating. No dramatic countdowns. No final warnings. The first strike came from orbit. Kinetic rods dropped like meteorites, detonating with force that cracked tectonic plates. From the black towers, the parasites surged upward, skeletal forms of glass and wire and writhing biomass, trying to shield their nests. It didn't matter. Deathworlders didn't fight to win. They fought to end. Below, the Valari could only watch as their skies lit up with unholy fury. White lances of plasma stitched through enemy clusters. Sonic displacers turned entire city blocks into vibrating dust. Drones swarmed in tight formation, painting targets with the precision of surgeons and the cold indifference of reapers. Kale moved to Voss's side, her expression unreadable. We just leveled 3 cities to kill 2 hives. He didn't look at her. And if we hadn't, they'd have birthed 20 more tomorrow. A pause. Do you ever wonder what we look like to them? Voss turned, his stare like iron. Survivors. The fleet kept firing. The enemy kept dying. Somewhere, deep below the surface, something vast began to stir. And far across the stars, the rest of the galaxy began to listen. Valari Prime burned quietly beneath the black hulls of the Deathworlder fleet. From orbit, it was a world smothered by ash and shadow, its radiant greens now cinders beneath spreading webs of hostile infestation. Yet amid the silence, the Deathworlders worked, methodical, unshaken. Commander Arlen Voss stood in the War Ops chamber aboard the Iron Dagger, arms folded, gaze fixed on a hovering map of planetary hot zones. Pulses of red bloomed like infections across the continents. Each represented a node of activity from the enemy they had not yet named, because to name it was to grant it form, and Voss had no interest in pretending this thing was anything but an extermination problem. Kale Rix entered without ceremony, her boots silent on the composite deck. She'd reviewed the surface scans, parsed the biosignatures, cross-referenced them with extinct galactic threats, and found nothing familiar. It's not a species, she said. It's a pattern. A viral architecture, shifting and consuming. Every structure it builds repurposes matter, biological or synthetic. Valari, wildlife, old tech, even geological mass. It's not evolving, it's spreading. Like fire that learns. Voss didn't turn. Any intelligence? Kale hesitated. No command structure we can see. No communication we can intercept. But there's something instinctual. Strategic. We hit a node. It compensates elsewhere. This thing understands pressure points. Adaptable parasites, Voss muttered. Perfect. Valari scientists are calling it Null Swarm. They're calling it that because they haven't seen it fight us yet. Across the fleet, preparations accelerated. Drop pods were loaded with atmospheric conversion bombs. Swarm disruptors were fitted to the hulls of subsonic drones. Tactical AIs fed combat simulations into real-time projections, mapping out probabilities with cold efficiency. The Deathworlders had no illusions of glory. This was not war, it was deletion. The Valari, by contrast, stood paralyzed. In a crumbling command chamber miles below the surface, Prime Minister Theron watched a ghostly transmission of the Deathworlder fleet's orbital maneuvers. They moved like predators that had long since forgotten fear. Efficient, elegant, terrifying. They're not even asking questions, his defense advisor whispered. They see us, but they don't see us. They see the threat, Theron murmured. To them, we're background noise. We're already lost. There was a beat of silence. Are they right? Theron didn't answer. On the Iron Dagger, Kale uploaded the latest data burst into the command console, her hands moving with mechanical speed. Her mind wasn't on the code, it was on the faces. Valari children huddled under broken ceilings. Teachers weaponizing textbooks to defend evacuation zones. Families crawling through sewage ducts to avoid detection by the things that had once been their neighbors. She swallowed the knot in her throat. "Arlen," she said quietly, "how far do we go?" He looked at her, eyes like a frozen sea. To the end. It was decided. Strike teams were to descend on the 4 most infected zones. Not to liberate, to contain. Ground forces would be limited to autonomous walkers and reinforced infantry. No civilians to accompany, no assets to protect. Only terrain to burn and infestation to erase. Kale geared up alongside the drop unit. She had refused a remote command role, opting instead for frontline presence. Voss hadn't argued. If anything, he respected the choice more than he let on. The drop sequence initiated with a warningless countdown. At 0, the hulls beneath them split open like steel iris petals. The pod screamed down through the atmosphere, riding sonic detonations. Fire split the sky. Valari civilians scattered in panic as the Deathworlders landed, golems of steel and fury, striding out of their pods with weaponized precision. Where the swarm met them, it met erasure. Directed EMP bursts crippled biomechanical tendrils. Plasma-laced blades cut swathes through insectoid horrors. Walkers deployed gravitic fields that crushed hive towers into slag. Kale moved through the chaos, her HUD flickering with data. Enemy combatants, innumerable. Civilian interference, increasing. Command, this is Rix. We need to revise zone protocol. Too many untagged biosigns in the area. I'm reading non-hostiles close to impact targets. Voss's voice came through, steady as ever. Is the infestation present? Yes. Then proceed. She stopped moving. Arlen, this isn't a rescue mission. It never was. Kale gritted her teeth, ducking a tendril that lashed out from the smoke. Her gauntlet pulsed, and a sonic shell vaporized the threat. Around her, the Deathworlders advanced without hesitation, their objectives crystal clear. There was no valor here. No sorrow. Only efficiency. Back aboard the Iron Dagger, Voss watched the feeds. Every feed. He watched Kale hesitate. Watched her move again. He watched the swarm fold in on itself, rewriting its tactics. It had learned their rhythms. It was adapting. And so he changed the rhythm. Deploy the erasure package, he said. The bridge officer blinked. Sir, that's not cleared. Clear it. He keyed a terminal. A series of chained authorizations triggered a classified payload buried within the command ship's core. Deep in orbit, a satellite cluster reoriented, and hundreds of black cylinders released from their holds. They dropped like quiet death toward the planet's crust, shattering on impact and dispersing a shimmering mist. Where it settled, it unwrote. It did not burn. It did not explode. It simply erased, down to the atom, collapsing matter into vacuum. Biological or synthetic, there was no discrimination. No memory. No warning. Kale saw it firsthand. A sector of the city folded inward, like someone had cut a hole in reality. Screams echoed from civilians caught in the edge radius. Her heart froze. Arlen, they're still down here. Voss's voice was distant now. Collateral was projected. Acceptable margins. These are people. They're variables. If we don't eliminate the swarm entirely, nobody makes it off that rock. Kale turned away from the mic. Around her, the battlefield had gone still, momentarily confused by the weapon that made no sound. Even the swarm retreated. It feared the unknown. Maybe that was the only thing it feared. Voss closed his terminal. His face reflected back at him, older than he remembered, hollow at the edges. He didn't feel guilt. He hadn't in years. Guilt was for those who had the luxury of clean hands. His were dyed with a million ends, all necessary. Still, something flickered at the edge of his thoughts. Kale, back on the surface, took cover beneath a half-collapsed structure. A Valari child huddled against her, dust in his hair, eyes wide with fear, but no tears left to shed. She stared upward as the sky cracked again, more pods descending. Reinforcements. She realized with a chill that the 7th Fleet wasn't there to win a war. It was there to end a species. The child clutched her arm. Behind her, the swarm regrouped for another wave. Kale knew they'd survive this next attack. Knew they'd crush it. What she didn't know was what would be left once they did. She activated her beacon. Boss, if you're watching, listen to me. We're not just ending threats down here. We're erasing futures. She paused. Don't make us the thing that needs to be answered with a scream. The transmission cut. Voss stood silent. The galaxy, somewhere beyond, still watched. And the war had only begun. The silence that followed Kale's message was not hesitation, it was calculation. On the Iron Dagger, Commander Arlen Voss reviewed the transmission in isolation again and again. Not for its emotion, not for its sentiment, but for its implications. She had challenged not his strategy, but the principle guiding it. And though principle had little room in warfare, Voss understood the weight of perception. He couldn't afford his officers to waver, even the ones with cause. He stood before the holodeble as new data flickered in, swarm density maps, reinfection rates, projected civilian loss. The erasure package had bought time, not resolution. The Null swarm, fragmented and burned, had retreated into deeper substrata, into Valari's crust, into old subway veins, into the buried temples of species long gone. But it wasn't just hiding. It was listening. Kale moved through the Undercity with a handful of surviving Deathworlders and 36 civilians. The heat was oppressive. The structures groaned with tension. Above, the surface was a war zone scorched clean. Below, the air was still, except for the vibrations in the stone. The child still followed her. His name was Sarat, barely 10. His voice came only in gestures now, but his eyes told stories. He didn't understand what the swarm was, only that it had taken his mother's face and worn it like a mask before dying in fire. Kale hadn't looked away when it happened. She couldn't afford to. Sergeant Milos, one of her senior field operatives, jogged up behind her. Scans picked up movement, 5 clicks ahead. Not swarm, something else. Valari. Alive, but shielded. Underground chamber. Not tagged in our maps. Kale nodded. Let's find them. And keep it quiet. The team advanced through cracked tunnels, dodging heat blooms and seismic tremors. Eventually, the corridor narrowed into a dome, half natural, half constructed, glowing with soft bioluminescence. Inside were survivors, dozens, maybe hundreds, clustered beneath a network of alien machinery pulsing with green light. An elder stood to meet her, regal, robes torn but eyes burning with focus. You've come, he said. Kale frowned. You were expecting us? No, but I knew someone would come to finish what was started. He gestured toward the walls. They bore markings, old glyphs, not Valari in origin. Images of entities like vines and eyes, of cities consumed, then reborn. This isn't the first time the Null swarm has visited this world, the elder continued. We sealed its memory, buried the archive, but when it returned, it remembered us. Kale looked over the strange machinery. This is tech. Precursor. Beyond. It doesn't kill the swarm. It confuses it, disorients its connection to shared memory. As long as we remain here, this chamber breaks its understanding of the local biosphere. Kale exhaled. A blind spot. Exactly. Her calm crackled. Voss. Rix. Situation. Kale stepped away from the elder. We found a resistance pocket. Civilians and old-world tech. They're in a zone that neutralizes swarm behavior. Could be key to extraction? No. It's a research node. It holds potential for a long-term countermeasure. Voss didn't speak immediately. When he did, his voice was measured. If it's key, tag it. Our orbital solutions can prioritize protection. Kale narrowed her eyes. Protection or deletion? We both know this swarm learns. If it senses that tech, it'll come for it. I will not allow another foothold. Understand me clearly. Understood, she said, teeth clenched. She didn't tag it. Instead, she turned to Milos. We hold this chamber. Quietly. Feed no data to command. I'll manage the comms. You're going dark? No. I'm going gray. Outside, the swarm surged again. On the surface, it erupted from dead ground like a hive of knives, its tendrils armored now, its core bodies cloaked in mirror skin. It had analyzed Deathworlder weapons and returned improved. Voss watched from orbit, saw their walkers begin to fall. Their plasma rounds deflected. Gravity snares rendered inert. He adjusted his collar. Initiate Phalanx protocol. Launch the torch guards. Torch guards haven't been field tested in. They're not being tested. They're being unleashed. Moments later, the Hammer Cry, a support dreadnought, began deploying its payload. The torch guards, synthetic infantry with quantum-bound reflexes and total mission autonomy, landed in squads of 6. Each unit moved with silent brutality, carving through swarm resistance without slowing. Their directive, extinction. On the ground, Kale felt it. A shift. The swarm retreated again, but not in fear, in precision. It wasn't fleeing. It was rerouting. And the torch guards, godlike, flawless, followed. Milos came to her. They're headed this way. Straight line. Through everything. Kale's heart dropped. Voss knows, she whispered. In the command dome, the elder tensed. They come. You must choose. She stood at the center of two paths, one paved in orders, one in defiance. She chose the latter. Pack what you can, she said. We're moving. They routed an alternate path into the crust, hoping to avoid both swarm and torch guard. But it wasn't long before they realized the swarm wanted them to move. It herded them, not with brute force, but with tremors, light, noise, psychological lures. The child tugged her sleeve, pointed to a wall. It pulsed. Cavitation, Milos said. It's creating hollow pockets. It's leading us into something. Kale paused, eyes narrowing. A trap. No, the elder said behind her, his voice hard. An invitation. The wall fractured. Beyond it lay a hollow, a cathedral of hive architecture, vast and empty. In its center, a mirrored obelisk, humming, not with energy, but memory. Kale stepped forward. The swarm held back. Why show us this? She asked aloud. No voice answered. But the obelisk shimmered and played back herself. Her landing. Her message to Voss. Her plea. It knew her. It understood her. And in that moment, Kale understood something too. It's not a mind, she murmured. It's a recorder. A library. It consumes to archive. It builds not to expand, but to remember. That's why it adapts. It's not instinct. It's accumulation. The elder nodded. It copies. The way your torch guards do. The way your strategies do. You're more like it than you admit. Kale reached out. Her hand touched the obelisk. A flood of sensation tore through her. Lives, memories, species she had never seen. Wars older than her bones. A chorus of lost civilizations screaming into oblivion. And one message, rising above them all. You are the threat. You burn what you cannot know. Her eyes flew open. She keyed her calm. Voss, I have something. Something new. You need to hear me. Static. Then, his voice, cold, distant. You went silent. I assumed compromise. Listen to me. The swarm, it's not evil. It's preservation gone mad. It's trying to remember everything before it's erased. Including us. Voss didn't hesitate. Then it must be ended before it remembers how to win. The channel cut. Kale turned to Milos. We hold the chamber. Fortify this site. If Voss sends more, we stop them. And if he drops another erasure, then we send the message first. She turned back to the obelisk. You've been watching. Now it's our turn to teach you what not to become. Outside, the swarm gathered, quiet and waiting. But for the first time, it didn't attack. It listened. Time fractured within the memory chamber. Kale stood in the low hum of bioluminescent walls, her hand still resting on the obelisk's cool, mirrored surface. Her pulse slowed. Around her, the Volari survivors, frightened, hopeful, desperate, watched for meaning. Behind them, the last of the Deathworlder's squad hardened their defensive perimeter, weapons trained on the narrow tunnel where the swarm, and now the torch guards, might soon arrive. But neither had moved. Not yet. Sarah clutched her leg again. The child had grown silent, but his eyes were constantly searching, looking for something in her face that told him this would end differently than every other moment since the sky fell. I need more time, Kale whispered. Milos adjusted his rifle. We're out of it. Torch guards hit Sector 8. It's a burn path straight here, and the swarm is mimicking their flanks. They're learning from us again. Kale turned to the obelisk. It shimmered softly, displaying abstract forms and pulses, like thoughts rendered in light. She didn't need a translator. She could feel the question. Why now? Why show trust when everything she'd done, everything the Deathworlders had done, signaled annihilation? She drew in a breath. You want to remember. You take what you see and make it yours. But you can't tell the difference between threats and lessons. The obelisk pulsed again, an image this time. A world, clearly not Volari, swallowed in gray vines. Swarm tendrils rising to meet orbital fire. Another image. Deathworlder soldiers deploying. Cities leveled. The pattern repeated again and again. Kale's jaw tightened. We don't trust what we don't understand. And you consume what you can't control. You and Voss, you're both trying to erase the future so nothing unexpected survives. The obelisk dimmed, then displayed something she hadn't expected, Voss. A perfect projection of him, eyes fixed, jaw clenched, commanding fire, dictating terms of extermination with brutal calm. And over it, the words formed in light, not written but meant. He is your voice. Is he your choice? Kale turned away, shoulders rising. He's not my voice. Not anymore. Outside the chamber, the air changed. A new sound joined the low, harmonic pulse of the obelisk, a vibration, mechanical and deliberate. Torch guards. Their approach was unhurried. They did not sneak. They announced themselves with precision. They're here, Milos said. 5 units. No warning shots. Hold position. He looked at her. They won't stop for a standoff. I'm not asking them to. Kale activated her field comm, opening a direct channel to the Iron Dagger. Her voice rang clear and unyielding. This is Commander Kale Rix. Cease Torchguard advance immediately. I am in possession of a pre-collapse data architecture capable of halting the swarm's expansion permanently. Repeat, ceasefire. Further aggression will be considered a deliberate attack on Allied discovery. Voss's voice returned, colder than before. You are not authorized to negotiate with the swarm. Your personal assessment is noted. Torchguards will continue protocol. Stand clear. Kale's next words cut through the room like a blade. Then consider this my resignation. She switched channels. Broadcast full sweep. Link the obelisk. Let it speak. The obelisk, reacting to her command, expanded its projection, flooding not just the chamber, but linking into open Deathworlder communication bands. Across the fleet, command terminals flared as foreign data patterns surged through security partitions. Technicians shouted warnings. Cipher AIs locked into paradox loops. And in the chaos, a signal rose. Untranslated, pure conceptual thought. Death. Memory. Consequence. It was not an attack. It was a mirror. On the Iron Dagger, Voss stood still amid a storm of alerts. His officers turned to him, confused. Frightened. Sir, it's not a breach. It's showing us. He said nothing. Watched the projections as they cycled. Deathworlder history. Their wars. Their solutions. 1,000 planets left uninhabitable in the name of control. All of it catalogued. All of it recorded by something that had never lifted a hand until it was first struck. One of his advisors turned, voice trembling. Sir, is it sentient? Voss's expression didn't waver. It's worse. It's curious. On the surface, the torch guards stopped outside the chamber. They didn't attack. Their directive was clear. But a pause had entered their formation, as if the message, even without orders, reached something deeper. Kale emerged. Alone. No weapon drawn. No armor powered. I am not your enemy, she said. I am not here to end you. She didn't say whether she meant the swarm or the soldiers. The torch guards didn't answer. But one stepped back. Just half a pace. It was enough. Kale keyed her comm once more. You wanted an answer, Arlen. Here it is. We are not the fire that answers a scream. We are the voice that breaks the pattern. Voss stared at the interface. No one will believe you, he said quietly, to no one. And yet, across the fleet, units began to receive fragments of the swarm's memory. Not just violence, not just consumption, but echoes of wonder, preserved cities, lost cultures, songs from extinct species played back as soundless harmonies. The Null swarm wasn't a destroyer by nature. It was a survivor of extinction, and it feared them. Voss stood alone. Outside the chamber, the swarm slowly retracted, not in retreat, but in trust. Around it, the Valari ruins still burned, but in places, the damage had stilled. Even the sky seemed quieter. Milos approached Kale, eyes wide. You ended it. She shook her head. No. We changed the question. In the days that followed, no formal treaty was signed. The Deathworlder fleet withdrew, uneasy but obedient. The Null swarm retreated into its subterranean network, maintaining distance, offering no resistance. The Valari, what was left of them, began to rebuild with both fear and awe in their bones. And the obelisk remained. Kale stayed behind. She couldn't return to Voss, couldn't follow orders built on silence and ash. She taught Sarah how to read glyphs. She helped the Elder stabilize the field arrays. She watched as the swarm moved on the horizon, not to conquer, but to listen, Perhaps the galaxy would always dance between fire and memory, but someone had to keep the balance. And for now, that was her.